and actually get something out of it as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that really is a major key factor of how the professional players are separated from the up and coming amateur players, the semi pros, and those types of players as well. It's being able to have a team for an extended period of time due to contracts and things of that sort. Because obviously those established organizations have those things in place as opposed to some of these other organizations that are either new to Call of Duty or are trying to work their way up to having those contracts set up for those players. Of course, SNK Esports was definitely a team that was fighting their way through the brackets on those online qualifiers. They were able to qualify in the third and final online qualifier for Season 1. Then they were able to stay in the season pretty much throughout the rest of it and right up to the relegation period where a lot of these teams were dropping off and the top five ended up staying inside for the playoffs for the Season 1. So they were also a good team. It was Crisis, Tyrant, Steel, and PKC Dub. I know Chance had a lot of fun pronouncing that name during the time that he actually got a chance to cast some Call of Duty with me on one of those league matches, and it was exciting to see them play as well.
Yeah, I never personally had the experience SNK, but like we said before, the issues with rosters, does the team work out? And I'm not sure why there were so many teams kind of releasing kind of toward the end. I'm not sure if it was just having different opportunities. Maybe even UMG South Carolina maybe played a role of, your team really wanted to go to this tournament. You had some issues at home. Maybe you couldn't play with the roster, and you maybe ended up forming teams at South Carolina. I'm not really sure what the issue is. Kind of unfortunate. I mean, a team like SNK, who apparently was doing very, very well leading up, you wish that they kind of just mend things together and continue on. But like I said, a number of different stories with all these rosters is the fact that, can you stick together? Do you enjoy playing with one another? If you do, things are going to work out. If not, it's going to be a bumpy road. It seems that that was the case for SNK for sure.
Yeah, it was, and of course, we still are basically going over these teams because we had a lot of fun seeing them qualify. They grinded as much as they could, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. But of course, that set up the top five that we just went over. As far as the top three were concerned, let's go over the last two teams that we hadn't gotten a chance to really discuss, and that's of course Kingdom Esports and Onslaught Esports. Let's start with Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we were able to spectate over one of Kingdom's games last night, in which case they ended up facing off against EZG. Like we mentioned, the EZG, probably one of the most talented teams that we had in all of the Perfect Alliance, playoffs or just in the regular season in general. I believe the first hard point was basically in EZG's favor, as you would expect, and I believe Game 2 went down all the way to round 11, in which case Kingdom was nearly able to notch that one out. And I believe that in the two games that we casted over for EZG, the Game 2s both went to round 11, in which case it was Kingdom who ended up taking the next one. When it came down to Vigor versus EZG, it didn't really work out for Vigor too much, and EZG ended up walking away with that one. So in some cases, if you look at EZG's game, maybe the search could be a possible opportunity where you step in and try to take that one from them. But in either case, though, it's a round 11. And in some ways, you can't really look at that as like a dominating victory. Like, granted, we won the search and destroyed. Maybe if we take the CTF, we can force another search. But when it comes down to round 11, I don't really think you take that as motivation coming into Game 5. It's just like, hey, I hope we can replicate the luck that we got from that last round. So I'm not really sure. I didn't really get to commentate over Kingdom too much. I believe they were previously known under Phoenix, if that is correct.
That is
so they had a couple, organizational changes or at least team changes throughout the season. But like I said, pretty good team. I believe Roasted was probably one of the more talented players for the roster and, put up some big numbers.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I mean, the Vesper was his submachine gun of choice when it was not banned, and man, did he have some feeds with that weapon throughout the season. So, they definitely fought hard. They played really well. Unfortunately, they had an early upset in the losers round 2 and were eliminated 3-0 against Earthroot Gaming during the bracket. Of course, that leaves Onslaught, one of our favorites when they started the season, just because of the sheer story that came with the players that had started the season there. And of course, Exib and M. Ruiz were part of that roster in the beginning of the season. This was basically Enigma 6 from UMG California back in the day that came together to play under the Onslaught brand. And man, did they start fast in the season. It was exciting to have them on. But of course, the roster changes, again, ended up being the downfall to the way their season ended.
Yeah, I was personally like a really big fan of Onslaught kind of coming into the overall season. Like, oh my gosh, we got Onslaught in here. I'm really excited. Like, I really like these guys a lot. The organization, at least in the amateur community, especially at MES tournaments, like you mentioned with E6,
Oh,
the previous Onslaught roster. I mean, they look to be a story team, to say the least. Like you mentioned, I believe 3 out of the 4 players who had previously played on that old Onslaught roster. So this is kind of like a coming home type of thing for them. You're like, this is our old roster, how we perform, especially when it comes to the PA season. And like I said, it was just kind of unfortunate that they couldn't stick it through. I believe it was Chon and Murica who were the other 2 players, along with Exhibit and Ruiz toward the beginning of the season. Substituted players like Cade and I believe Anthrax in there a little bit. I believe I casted over Anthrax. I don't think I ever was able to catch Cade on the team for a little bit of time. But either way, Onslaught, like I said, a number of different issues. It's kind of unfortunate. You can kind of, at least over on Kite Sports PD, you can kind of look at their overall roster. When you see that many names, it's like, there was something going on. There was something going on here with the amount of players that were actually kind of filling in at different times. So, like I said, another unfortunate thing. Was really hoping to watch, Onslaught play. There was a number of different rosters that we can kind of point out. We talked about Lethal. We mentioned Jester, Onslaught especially, that just could not keep it through toward the end. And, maybe they'll take this as learning experience. Realize that we were this close to possibly qualifying, getting some money as well. But, you live and you learn, and we'll see how Onslaught decides to do that in the future.
Yeah, and obviously it is exciting to see when teams are able to stick things out and finish off the season. And hopefully Onslaught, it's one of my favorite organizations throughout esports as far as what they've been doing as an organization, because they're obviously not just in Call of Duty, they're in other esports, and they have found success. Their Smite team is one of the best. As they were able to qualify for the Smite Pro League. So that was an exciting thing to see for them. At one point, I believe they were in Gears. Don't quote me on that, but they've been around, to say the least. So it's exciting to see some of these organizations also have some bit of success in Call of Duty as well. So obviously that covers the Season 1 standings for the top 5 teams. We're going to be right back after a quick commercial break down a little bit more of the matches that happened throughout, and hopefully the servers will cooperate with us here so we can bring you the grand finals of Season 1 of Perfect Alliances League. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Bracket Show here on the Perfect Alliance channel. I'm Maze, joined by the one and only Mr. Rostermania, Landon himself here. And of course, we're just delving into some of the details here on the brackets and how these teams basically grinded throughout the season to get to the point that they got to here at the end of it all. Of course, the grand finals are currently on a little bit of a pause as we are still having some server issues on the PlayStation 4 for Black Ops 3. So hopefully Activision is working hard to get those back on. But for now, we're going to delve into these brackets and talk about those matches starting from round one that Kingdom Esports Onslaught Gaming, start as it was an interesting series, to say the least here, Landon.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was kind of like the beginning of what is Onslaught really going to bring to the table. That Kingdom loss was in some ways not really questionable. I mean, you got to come into the tournament, kind of coming into the overall records, and you see Kingdom in some places, the 4th seed, Onslaught the 5th seed. Most likely, we'll expect Kingdom to take this. Based on the previous performance that we've seen Onslaught have, I mean, and the players that have been on this team, the storied, roster, the organization of this team, I would expect them honestly to probably take this game, but wasn't the case. It was a 3-1. I wasn't able to spectate over it, but in some cases that was a lot of momentum for Kingdom. They'd obviously move on, but that was just the beginning for the issues, I guess you could say, Onslaught would have throughout the tournament.
Oh, yeah, they unfortunately did not have that much success, but they were able to set the tempo early by picking up the first map. Obviously, Respawn is very important to pick up, and, Onslaught was able to do that. Unfortunately, they lose 3 straight. Kingdom sweeps them after that one win that they did get, and it knocked them straight into the losers bracket. And in round one, they had 5 maps, obviously, to play on the best of 5, and it was Hardpoint Evac to start. And, of course, Breach, Search, and Destroy, then Fringe, Uplink, and Stronghold CTF. And that was the last game played in that series. Of course, they also ended up falling short 3-1 to Earthroot Gaming, who looked like they were going to set the tempo for a miracle losers bracket run.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking, I was going to mention, was like Earthroot. I'm not really sure how these guys are going to do. I mean, obviously, they do have the 2nd seed, so you got to expect they're at least going to be a semi-talented team, of course. But they ended up taking out Onslaught. That was another surprise for me. I was kind of talking like Onslaught loses the Kingdom. Okay, it's 1 loss. Well, it's second strike.